Good evening, everybody. We're going to be looking at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Dash instead of Golem this evening because Dash has all the action. But I'm going to start it off here just going over a trade on Ethereum that I recently made. Then I'm going to look at the three and do a little bit of a longer term perspective as well. I'm going to zoom out and give some key levels that if I were long and looking months out, if these levels broke, I would be concerned with my long position because we're trying to avoid these little fluctuations and caring about them if our long position, if that's our game plan. But there are some levels that are important, so I'll look at those as well. And let's start it right off. So Ethereum today, I made a mistake, and I want to point out that mistake. And I think mistakes are really good to make, especially when you can profit and make mistake, where your mistake is getting out too early and leaving too much money on the table, which was the scenario here for ETH. And so looking back on everything, I'll just give the rundown. Pretty much got a perfect entry where we were pulling back, and I saw here on the hourly time frame our RSI was beginning to get oversold, and I saw on the 15-minute time frame that our RSI at that point was oversold as well. And I looked to the 5-minute time frame all real quick and saw that the 5-minute time frame was under 20 RSI as well. So this was almost a little bit of dumb luck in terms of the timing that I saw because I was live and I'm pretty distracted when I'm live, but I was able to immediately, once I saw all three of those levels oversold, just start throwing up bids on the way down, and they ended up getting filled in the 254s and 253s on the way down, and then we started getting this bounce. And when all of those three time frames line up oversold at the same time, it really gives me more confidence to know to just get in because we will see a short-term bounce. And I figure in that kind of scenario, worst case scenario, it keeps going down a bit. I get in too early and, I can try and get out break even. But avoiding, or really just a flash crash, not a flash crash, but a significant all-out dump would have had to have made that a poor entry at that point. So we started to see the bounce play out. And again, I was very confident and patient because I knew that this was going to play out a little bit longer term because the hourly RSI was so low, and I was looking for this hourly chart to start getting a bit of a bounce. Let me zoom back in here. Sorry about that. So this is where we were, and we saw the long lower wick on the candlestick, the bounce from those oversold levels, and we started to head back up. And that being said, we also had a support back here, which we were watching, of 253.23. Now, we did break that support by dipping down to 252.67. So broke it by a little over $1. Fairly, it's notable, but if you put up a support line at that level, you can see that we really did bounce right off that support. So deceiving a bit in the sense that we literally broke the level, so it was a lower low, but we did bounce off right off that same level, and we got a really powerful bounce that ended up following through. So my mistake was when I exited, and there were some games being played at this point in time. So on the 5-minute time frame, as we're seeing the bulls make their move to the upside, there were these sells on the ask, and if you were watching the order book, you could see them come in, where it would be 300 ETH lots, and it would flash up, and the bulls would buy it. The bulls had a lot of buying pressure back here before this move even started, and they would buy it, but another one would come up, and then another one, and it would just be waiting. And it was clear that in that style of selling, rather than someone putting up a 2,000 ETH wall to try and keep the price contained, this is someone that is trying to get rid of their ETH because they're breaking up their order and they're not stacking their orders. They're just making them appear out of nowhere, so the bulls are buying into that. That's what I would be doing if I were trying to sell a large position, exactly what that person was doing. So I was a little bit more timid, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, we did break to a lower low. The price did break. I made note of that. I saw this endless selling, and I thought, okay, I'm in the profit right now. If I take this profit where I'm at, it's going to be, a nice first trade of the day, and that could be my day goal, and I'd be fine with that. So I did take the profit because of that selling that was still going on at that point, and then eventually it played out, and obviously it was a huge bull run to the upside, and missed out on a lot of profit and gave up a perfect entry. And I did get one more little trade in there, but nowhere near making up for what I left on the table. And this move, I look back on it and I try and think, okay, what could have gone different? Because pretty much it's the best case scenario. I made money and I have the opportunity to learn from a mistake at the same time. So the big volume came in out of nowhere, and this almost looks like a short squeeze in the strength that we saw out of nowhere. So I am okay missing that move. I didn't sit here and count all the money that I could have made had I stayed in, because I feel that's just a waste of time. But if you're going back and looking over the trade and being productive and trying to find, what could I have seen, what could I have done different, that is worth doing. And then ideally you don't make that mistake again. So the chart that I'm looking at now, the daily time frame for Ethereum, I still have hope for this bounce, and I am in a partial position right now where I did enter on this consolidation, and I exited half of my position when we broke the low of this consolidation. So I'm only in a half position right now and looking for the bulls to show up. The one reason that this consolidation isn't really scaring me much on this hourly time frame is because of the volume. This is very, very low volume, and you can tell by looking at the action that there's really not much going on. So this doesn't scare me off just yet, the consolidation following this breakout, because it was such a significant bull break that I am anticipating a higher low to form and for the bulls to give the 270s another shot. Another reason that I like Ethereum at this point is the 4-hour time frame. I'm looking for a bullish MACD cross. We're right there, and if we see a little bit of a lower wick form on this candlestick, again, the declining volume and looking for a higher low to form, and if we see enough bullish momentum overnight where we can get a move back up to the mid 270s, that's ideally what we would be looking for. And the daily time frame is the last time frame that I like here, where we have this clear base of support, and I put it on the daily time frame so no candlestick closes below it. We bounced off of it one time, we saw a lower high, bounced off of it, lower high, and then we just bounced off of it this previous candlestick, which switched 2 hours ago, and we need to see some follow through back to the upside because this is a bullish reversal hammer. And I'll get rid of this line here. You can see that long lower wick. So we need a green day here this coming day. We've got 22 hours, and we need the bulls to get up over 275 and see follow through and be a green candlestick to confirm this, because this is a tightening pattern and it is a descending triangle pattern where, not sure where the ideal anchor point is here, but that looks pretty close, where we're rejecting and hitting these lower highs and getting very, very tight. So we know a break is imminent in the near-term future, and the volume had been dropping off. We saw a little spike in volume, which was the bulls buying the dip with that long lower wick. If we see a bullish break of this pattern, we have a bullish MACD cross ready and waiting to go, and the patterns in other charts in this sector, in the cryptocurrency sector, have been forming these patterns and already making their bullish breaks. Bitcoin has already broken this lower high pattern, and obviously Litecoin with the all-time highs has as well. So Ethereum is a little bit of a laggard in this sense, and really tonight is the bulls' chance to turn things around. But the way that this chart is forming, we could stay in here for another couple dozen hours. So it might be a fairly boring day in terms of, well, we'll see what overnight brings. It really could go either way. It depends on the volume. Watch that volume indicator. So checking in on the longer term time frame, if you're holding Ethereum and you are looking months out. So what we have is this weekly chart, which had our huge move to the upside, very unsustainable RSI, knew a big pullback was coming, couldn't predict the top, but certainly knew it would be a pretty significant pullback. Bearish reversal spinning top candlestick, we confirmed it. We had the flash crash. I'm ignoring that lower wick. And then we saw a indecision candlestick last week with bulls buying the dip, and now we're forming even a tighter range, an inside bar. So the range is tightening out. The volatility is dropping off a bit. If you are long, your first concern would be if 206 were to break. If 206 were to break, we're going to very quickly head into the 180s, I would say, at that point, and that would be a bearish indication. And if we look on the daily time frame for a bit more detail as to why that dip is so important, because that would lead to lower highs and lower lows continuing and giving back a pretty significant amount if we're giving back, over 50% from the all-time high. So the bulls really want to see a break of this pattern, but if you were looking longer term, that would be a level where I would look to exit, and then I could maybe, get back in $30, $40 cheaper, but that is a significant long term. In terms of the fundamentals, that's really, we all know the fundamentals have incredible potential and all that, but in terms of how it's going to play out, how it gets adopted by the general public, it's really hard to predict in terms of longer term prices. And really anybody, you have to take everything with a grain of salt, because anybody who has an opinion, it is a complete guess, and the level of, educated guess, but determined by how much research they have done, is valid, but it is a guess nonetheless. So I'm looking at just the price levels. 206 must hold. If the bulls see a move up over 323, we could be looking at a test of the all-time highs this summer still again. So that would be, this pattern is pretty important for what to expect for the next couple of months. So that's what I'm looking at on Ethereum. We'll see if we get some action to follow through on this candlestick today. Let's now switch over to Bitcoin. Let's start on the weekly longer term time frame, and then we'll zoom in after that. So we've seen a huge move to the upside here as well, and Bitcoin has a lot more history. So we do need to be, there's a lot more support levels to look at compared to Ethereum, where, Ethereum, we're looking down at $50 after we break a couple more support levels that have been established. But here on Bitcoin, we have 2050 as a very key support. That's the lowest price that we've seen on this pullback. If 2050 were to break, I would know that there would be significant further consolidation, potentially, multiple hundreds of dollars if we do break that 2050 level. So we could pull back all the way to 1400 and still be forming higher lows on this weekly time frame longer term. So keep that in mind. And we can look at the monthly chart. If you're looking really long here, this monthly chart hasn't really consolidated much in the history here. Well, this is only the history of TradingView, so it's only 2015, but we haven't really consolidated much after a huge bull move to the upside, and this looks kind of like that unsustainable move on the weekly time frame that did end up consolidating. So would be aware of the monthly time frame as well, but again, it would be nothing that would want me exiting a longer term position. It's just something to be aware of. Hey, maybe I'm going to have to ride out a pretty big pullback soon. Let's get mentally prepared and be able to go through that if that's what I'm trying to do with long term. So the daily time frame for Bitcoin, we did get a bullish break. We had our high, low, and let me get rid of some of these lines. They look like lasers shooting all over the place. All-time high, low of the pullback, lower high, higher low. This was a lower high, and then we had another higher low, and we did make a bull break of that level. So that is a good sign for the Bitcoin bulls already making that break, and that's another reason that I put a point in favor of those Ethereum bulls making a bull break of that descending triangle pattern we just looked at. So we did get a break here, and if you drew a downtrend resistance line on this daily time frame, that would have been really tight. That would have broken there. And that's where I would have drawn that line originally. And I did have that line drawn originally. And we had our support line up there. So it was another descending triangle pattern that broke 4 days ago. So let's get rid of this other support line. But you can see, fitting perfectly within that triangle. No closes below it. Bullish break. Bullish MACD cross ready to follow through. Ethereum daily time frame. We're looking for that bullish MACD cross to follow through. And from here on Bitcoin, even if we do consolidate, we can pull back and bounce off of 2550, form another higher low, and then see the bulls try and continue onward again. So a good sign for these bulls. We do have an uptrend support line we can be watching as well, although it actually doesn't have much of an upslope to it, so we can just leave that line as it is. So that's what we're looking at for Bitcoin. Litecoin has been hot. Let's look at the longer term. Well, we'll start with the daily because we're in blue sky breakout, which means there's no real resistance to be looking at, besides from the consolidation resistance that we're now forming. But a really nice follow-through move to the upside. Again, when we broke this high, this was the bull break of this descending triangle. It didn't really develop as much as the other two because it broke so much quicker. But we had our low, lower high, higher low, and then the bull break. And now we're consolidating. This is a bearish reversal spinning top candlestick that indicated indecision. And the wick, the upper wick and the lower wick are the same size. And when that occurs, it's indecision. It's an even battle between the bulls and the bears. So indecision when you're coming off a bull move is bearish. Indecision when you're coming off of a dump is bullish because whoever has been in control is now, not so much in control. There's a battle back and forth. So we are consolidating on the daily time frame. And the video yesterday was pointing out how we were probably going to be done with trading in the short term just because we were anticipating this consolidation. And there was a fairly decent bounce to be had here. And looking at the $50 support, pointed that out because it was a double top of resistance, and previous resistance then becomes support. So we did bounce it off of 49. We dipped below it. But once we did break this bearish head and shoulders pattern where we had our left shoulder, the head, and the right shoulder, this is the neckline of support. And I actually drew it in the wrong level here. You want to hit the neckline. So we hit the neckline and then we broke. So that was a lower high and a lower low, and that shifted momentum, and we pulled back another couple of dollars from that break. But if making an entry on that $50 level, would have had to sit through a little bit of red, but a solid bounce back up to 53.75. So that's almost a 4% move. Actually, no, that's almost an 8% move. So there was definitely solid gains to be had there, but I was more cautious on LTC because that consolidation was just beginning to play out. So the bulls are pretty pleased with how minimal consolidation has been at this point, and holding that $50 level is ideal on this consolidation for the bulls to show back up and make another shot at that all-time high sometime in the fairly near future if they can hold that $50 level. So longer term for Litecoin, really because of these all-time highs, we don't have any clear standing out supports. The support stands out is down at 33.38. That's obviously a long way away, but a nice stair-step higher pattern. And this is why people, consider, well, maybe it's a bubble, and that's just because of what the action was before this insane action that showed up. So definitely, that's why I'm just protective of everything, because we've never seen this space before. We don't know how the market's going to react. We can think it's the greatest thing in the world. It can be the greatest thing in the world, but if the world market does not agree with that, the price is going to go down. So on Dash now, all-time highs. Blue sky breakout, obviously ideal for the bulls when this happens. I personally was not in this move for a couple of reasons. Number one, the volume's a little bit scary for me. Just obviously there's plenty of volume in this breakout, but on the hourly time frame here, when you see this low volume, it is a little bit of liquid, and I know I am looking at Dash USD here, but it's also, I would have to trade it off of GDAX. I have the majority of my funds are on GDAX, and that's because I'm always trading these big three a lot more than the altcoins. I do trade that Gollum position every now and again. That's on Polo. I don't really like the interface of Polo. I know you can go through other websites to make the interface better, but I'm really just all focused on GDAX because that's what's been working for me. And this would have been a nice play, and I drew a line here on the all-time high. So the bulls broke that all-time high with very solid momentum on the hourly time frame. Nice healthy consolidation. What stands out on the consolidation is the decreasing bear volume on the pullback and almost no bear volume on the second candlestick. And so then the bulls showed back up, and here we are up at the top. So, volume's a little bit slim, certainly from what I'm used to with trading Ethereum on GDAX. Big time volume. This is definitely a lot less liquid, but there is money to be made, and there's a lot of people in the chat room making money. I am not one of them, but happy to see people profiting. So the daily time frame, let's zoom out a little bit. There was a bullish break of a tightening pattern here as well, and this was actually almost a bearish reversal pattern. I definitely would have been keeping an eye on it, but we didn't break the neckline of support, where that would have been our left shoulder, and I would have been drawing the neckline support somewhere. Actually, I would use a trend line because we are at a slope, but either hitting just the lower wicks here because they were so close to each other, but also, well, if you use the real bodies, you're going to get a bit of a downslope. So I would just be keeping an eye on that higher low, making sure those higher lows continue to form, and then we would have seen a bull break on increasing bull volume with a bullish MACD cross that would have definitely had us quickly forget that potential bearish reversal pattern. But it's always worth, recognizing these patterns and keeping an eye on them and saying, okay, if we break that level, that would be a bearish break, but we didn't break it, so we're obviously not going to either exit a bullish position or take a bearish position. I don't trade bearish the cryptocurrencies, but so here we are pulling back. If you want to make an entry at this point, the risk to reward is very high in both directions. And the more we go up without consolidating, the more that risk to reward ratio skews over to the side of risk. And sure, it could go up another $10. We have no idea. There's no resistance here, but it also could pull back $10 just as easily. So it's almost a bit of a coin flip. Once we're this extended to the upside, hourly RSI is in the low 80s. And let's see where that 4-hour RSI is at this point. That's up in the low 80s. So we're definitely overbought in the short term. But again, these RSI levels don't mean as much in blue sky breakouts, and there have been scenarios in this space where I've left some money on the table because I paid too much attention to the RSI in blue sky breakout. So we do have some nice strength here. How long can this bull move go? We'll have to see. It is our 5th green day in a row. We need to be a bit cautious of that, and we need to keep an eye on volume. We want to see if the bulls are running out of steam in terms of volume. We also want to keep an eye out for a potential volume climax candlestick, but the bulls definitely have full momentum right now. There's no red flags. In the 15-minute time frame, we're seeing some profit taking right now off 230 psychological resistance. But again, we could pull back here. Support that I'd be looking at in the short term on Dash would be down here, down at 204. Pull back about 204 a few times on this consolidation, and now looking for higher highs. So we need to form a higher low compared to that level. But again, just these periods of low volume, I want liquidity. I want to be able to be in and out whenever I want at a decent spread. And now these candlesticks are showing up with, more real bodies to them, but those little dots, that tells you there's no volume there, and it's not my style. So that's what we got heading into tomorrow, Thursday. We'll see how this plays out. Again, a close eye on that confirmation ETH candlestick, if we get that or not, and we'll see if Litecoin can hold 50. So I appreciate you watching. Have a great night.